Hi everyone, my name's Jon. I'm here partly on behalf of Faye and Devi, my collaborator and mentor, who was unable to join us today in person, but we've worked on this together. I want to begin again by, well, firstly I want to say, I know there's a lot of text on the screen, you do not have to read it, however, it's there if you would benefit from reading it. I'm also feeling pretty socially anxious about being here talking in front of you, and I feel like it would be easier to just acknowledge that than to pretend I'm not. To put things very briefly, I want this session to be something you participate in, something that sort of brings a generative and critical approach to intersensory access in particular, that gives you a kind of a way to engage perhaps differently with both collective and automated practices in this space. And I also want to again acknowledge that this presentation was written and is being shared on unceded Wurundjeri and Bunurong Bunurong country, and it is offered specifically against the settler colony of Australia and the slow genocide of the first people of this continent. It is also offered in the spirit of coalitional anti-colonial struggle against all structural processes of eugenics and extermination that are extremely visible in this particular present, and against the notion that digital practice is unlanded practice. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. And I want to acknowledge also Gabby Briggs, another collaborator who, in conversation yesterday, expressed the invitation to exist without resolution. I think that's a really, really useful and thoughtful phrase. So I would like to begin by quickly talking about access needs, and I want to also acknowledge that a lot of the ideas that have been spoken about so far intersect with this presentation, so I'll skip over some things to save us some time. Thank you, Amanda. That was very, there's a lot of crossover in Keenan as well, and I'm just going to kind of use these notes as loosely as I can to get us through. So what is an access need? We probably most commonly understand access needs as tools or environmental shifts that allow disabled people to participate. And disabled people have developed and guided this idea of access. But some people would go further and point out that this approach actually externalises and exceptionalises disability when disabling factors create fluctuating experiences and possibilities in the world for all, most if not all people. We can look at things like universal design as ways to address that, curb cuts and so on, but it might also be extreme weather, it might be the lack of food, lack of sleep, perhaps a lack of interest, I don't know. But really, in order to participate fully, everybody has access needs and they change minute to minute or day by day. Taking the social model of disability further, a consciousness built on disability justice has the capacity to unravel the ambient suprematisms of a situation. And through these practices, we might recognise ways that racial, cultural, linguistic, gender, class, neurological, psychological, educational and other barriers are disabling factors too, and in the same moment be invited to lower them, to extend a bridge. Access layers make things possible, and I do love to cite Georgina Cleage, a blind literature professor who often talks about the use of Netflix audio description by visually dependent users who might be doing other things like driving trucks across the country. A lot of people here, I'm sure, use captions when you're watching TV as well. So my preference usually is to start a session with an access check-in. We're not going to do that, there's too many of you and too little time. But in classes that I teach, I usually do this, and sometimes students' needs might be that they slept poorly the night before, had too many assignments going on. So we'll adjust the class to fit. We might take a break early. I might go and buy some snacks in the break so that people are taken care of in very small, very affordable, accessible ways that do nonetheless create an environment of greater participation, investment, trust. Often people will say, I've just noticed a typo, apologies, that they have no access needs today, when what they actually mean, I think, is that their access needs have been met. in art institutions and amongst publishers, I think things have been changing. Many institutions are taking really good steps and investing in trying to address what this might mean for them and for their communities, while others are evidently stagnating and pointing to the usual excuses about time, money, resources, skills. And those are they're not excuses, they're real reasons or they're real factors. There's also this kind of complaint that we hear a lot, which is that all this effort is only being used by X amount of people and therefore we don't think it's worthwhile. And I want you to think about what that means as well. But I think that collectively we can take control of this as artists and as people in the arts. I think that we need to be creative. If we think of ourselves as creative, we need to create the conditions and create the practices and just actually create access. And I think that we can do this with and without the liberatory claims of automated digital tools, the likes of which, and also policies and disability action plans and statutory requirements, which are not useless and not always useful. As with everything, criticality reigns. I'm also really conscious again that I'm speaking a bit quickly and strangely. The nerves are getting to me. But that's because I'm really keen to stop talking, and half of this, I'm honest, half of this is to get us to a point where you can actually do the speaking. So with that in mind, I want us to just think about how we can get away from this idea that access is moral or charitable even, God fucking forbid, but instead that it's inherently valuable and that it's a necessary and inventive part of our engagement with our own and other texts as artists, and also a vehicle for creating new texts, perhaps unexpected texts, and collective ones at that. So I am going to just say that in this workshop we want to try and demonstrate and participate in some different strategies of digital access that can enhance and deepen our sensory and associative and social encounters with art. I'd like to share and provoke the possibility of access as a strategy for generating these new texts. And I want to open briefly, because we've heard a lot about apps and AI as well, a critical context with which to grapple with emerging digital tools that purport to increase access. Okay, I'm actually going to skip these because I feel like you can easily find or stumble upon your own scripted examples of an audio description, hi, I'm such and such curator, this work is, a work on paper, 30 centimetres by... I'm actually just doing it, unscripted. But even in our spaces, and you're here because of ACCA, and I'm also, neglected to thank Anna and Shelley and Freya and ACCA and Buxton for having me here and inviting me. But, ACCA on their website in, say, the Word Made Flesh microsite from a few years ago, have published and commissioned polyphonic audio descriptions and polyphonic access-driven works where collective voices and collective perspectives are brought into play to create access, not just as a mechanical thing, but as a very social thing. And I kind of want to sort of also acknowledge what Keeman said before about monolithic understandings and what those might mean. But I do want to play this very short example because I think I always really like in art practice and in critical practice to go elsewhere and to see what people are doing when they're not thinking of things in the same terms that we do, or we might. So I want you to think about what it is to have description in the context of sportscasting.
May with the intercept mark for the Demons, so it's coming back inside 50. Another high ball, Van Rooyen gets blocked out of it. At the back, Chandler should goal dust. He's got just under a minute here, so he's got time, Salem. He's going to pop it up. One for the high flyers. Up they go, through lobs, hands, Van Rooyen, clubs, goals! Melbourne in front!
Oliver, the one that was creating some space, takes it on the half volley, used his body well. to evade the tackler. Found Neil Bullen by hand, who dribbles it through for a goal.
And so on. And that's obviously highlights. So we've taken this from, you know, an hour-long broadcast, 2 hours. How long sports goes for, who fucking knows? But, you know, we think about commentators, we know who's speaking, we know the style. We might love a commentator, we might hate a commentator, we might choose to tune into a different channel because we don't like that commentator. But we get a sense of what's going on. You know, you still have people who have been listening to sports for decades on their transistor radios. And what does that tell you about what's possible when we talk about intersensory access? And actually, it's also profitable. Like, this is a fucking commercial, sorry for swearing. I'm not sorry. A commercial sports radio network. Okay, sorry, I'm really rushing because I know the time is tight. I want to take us to an exercise now. So I want us to sort of decide for ourselves, do you want to be a participant as a visual participant or a non-visual participant? So if you don't want to engage visually, I'll simply invite you to close your eyes in a second or stand up and turn around or whatever. I'm actually going to skip these little definitions as well because I think that you probably know them, and if you don't, you can look them up. So alt text, captions, image descriptions. In fact, you probably could just take a photo of these slides. Sorry, past me that didn't want people to take photos. But look, I think the practice of describing images, it's important to foreground. It's been a very, very long, centuries-long practice. It's the birth of critical writing. It's, you know, it's part of a long tradition of curatorship and so on. But it's also a part of traditions of poetry and literature and all of that. Okay, so we're going to just go through a few steps together, and I'm going to put an image on the screen soon. And I'm going to ask those engaging visually and non-visually to work with each other. So at this point, if you've chosen to engage non-visually, I invite you to shut your eyes, and I'm going to figure out how this works. And if you want to stand up and turn around, that's fine too. So, okay, I'm putting the image up now. So can I have a volunteer, if you just raise your hand, somebody who's engaging visually. Did I accidentally turn this? Okay, this is called astroturfing. So can you describe some nouns that relate to the objects in the image?
Soft, pointy, tall, angular, square.
Those are excellent descriptors, but they are also adjectives.
I totally read that as adjectives, and I'm so sorry, everyone. I've ruined everything.
We're staying back another half hour, kids. But would you like to describe some nouns also?
Chair. Bed. Lamp. TV. Microwave. Couch. Carpet. Cupboard.
I reckon we might pause you there. Somebody who's not engaging visually, would you like to ask a question about those objects? Raise your hand, please. Okay, I'm coming to the middle row, and somebody who's wearing a green hat and a bracelet, that's you, yes. I'm passing you the microphone.
Yeah, what landscape or sort of context is this object or series of objects in? Like the environment.
Thank you. Can I have a visual engager to answer that?
So you're inside, looking outwards through some windows. It's quite a small space. It's very dark. There's some natural light coming in through the windows.
Thank you. Can I have another non-visual? Okay, Richard, I'm just passing this.
Thanks. Is it a painting or a still image or video, or what's the sort of medium? Thank you.
Would somebody like to answer that? Keenan.
It appears to be a photograph, but it might not be. But I think it's real. I think it's real.
Can I have a non-visual engager with a question? Right here.
How old is the image, do you think? Like, when was it made?
Visual engager?
Well, it looks like you could have clicked it yesterday, or could be 5 years ago. It doesn't really, there's nothing that you can tell to decode it. It's contemporary, but you don't even know what contemporary means anymore. Yeah.
Perfect place to raise that concern. Okay, so I would like to invite like one non-visual engager and one visual engager to speculate about what might be going on here. So can I have a non-visual person to volunteer first?
Just because of the objects mentioned, it feels like a domestic environment. So maybe someone's in their home or flat looking out into the world. The darkness is a bit strange though, so I haven't quite worked out. They light their lights off.
Thank you. And a visual person to speculate? I'm going to slip over on this concrete floor.
Yeah, the darkness as well is a bit confusing because I'd say it could potentially be like an Airbnb, looks almost like a student accommodation, but it's not photographed in the way that you would normally photograph that. So potentially, I guess also it being vertical, it could be just an Instagram photo of where you're staying, maybe. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, visual and non-visual engagers. So, look, 3 minutes version, we should all be extremely critical of accessibility claims of corporate software. We know the limitations, we know, I hope we know the compromise there in terms of systems of apartheid, genocide and oppression. I think also that idea of like, what is a monolithic perspective? Is it fascist? In my opinion, ontologically, it is deeply fascist. However, there is potential in these tools as well, and I think it's like, I personally have a affective response of fuck AI, I hate it all so much. However, I don't think that's actually fair, and I don't think it's an accurate way to engage with the effect, the real effect of these technologies in the real world for real people. Disabled people, people with sensory impairments actually really benefit from a lot of these tools, and so it becomes, again, a symptom of the political economy we live in, where we are forced to compromise short-term benefits for long-term systemic disasters. The tools that both can alleviate and also exploit inequalities. I just want to make sure that we actually look at the oh my God, what do I do with them? Can anybody see a link that says... Yes, I am, right here. Thank you so much. I'm engaging non-visually. Oh my God, it's a broken link. Really? Life sucks. Okay, well, look, GPT described it actually like relatively generously and in quite accurate detail, possibly in more detail and with more acuity, acuity in quote marks, than even the visual engages in this exercise. But what it is not able to do is communicate any of the context or the subjective knowledge. So this image was actually taken by one of the offshore detainees from Manus Island who was transferred here during sorry, I'm smushing the sentence now, who was living with another roommate in the Mantra Bell City Hotel in Preston in immigration detention. This is the room that he was in when we were in so-called lockdown. And there's a whole backstory, of course, to that process, this story, this scene, this image. I also, look, I think I will just wrap this up by inviting us to consider other instances where the genesis of the project deeply invokes the refusal of seeing or refusal of showing. I really, really liked the No Photo project against the Photo Festival that started a couple of years ago and took place again last year. And I'd like to finish by reading this alt text selfie from a really great project, sprung from a great project called Alt Text as Poetry. And this is a description which has no accompanying photo. Tired eyes with purple half moons underneath that will be puffed full by morning. I've had wrinkles since I was 7, cursed by the California sun and all the sick that's made a home of me. Take it all in stride while my knee still has the strength to bend, while my jaw keeps grip on the teeth inside it. Forgive me my suspicions. I'm caught in that tiresome age between being too young and too old to care. I open my eyes and lose the love of being underwater. Halt at every glass surface I see, hatless head, and the crystal frame of my untouched body already burned into false memory. That's by Mercedes Hasselroth. And I'll leave you with the question, how many of you use alt text, write your own alt text on your websites and your Instagram posts? Thank you.